record here. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, April 27th, and it looks cloudy outside. It's already rained here. I think, let's see. We've got just a couple of things to talk about today on the record. And you'll notice that I put these things up. I hope that's easier, maybe, on Canvas. There's a deadlines. Usually when I teach an online course, I have a deadlines page that looks like this. Man, I feel like I need to put a blanket or something over this light. It's killing me. Let's see if I've got something. I would just move the light, but this room has become my catch-all for my projects, my house projects, my summer house projects. That's a little better. Yeah, all right. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just back up some. So here are the things and the due dates. Basically, we've got a Monday due date. Upload your planning commentary tonight by midnight if you want to stay up that late working on it. I added some descriptions in here. You don't need to do all the plans and materials. You've already got that in the Google Drive, and I can look at it there. So you don't have to worry about that part. Just the commentary goes into Canvas. And I've got the task slides updating. So if you want to look at that for guidance on like what goes in those paragraphs, you can also check back on the EdTPA example and see how that person answered the questions. And oh, maybe it's not here. Maybe I put it in the actual like announcement or whatever that I sent out. So yeah, you saw it here in the announcement if you caught that. If you get stuck on a question, just write a sentence or two about like what you would need to actually be able to answer that question, right? So if it asks you to talk about how you've planned for students with different learning needs and don't really know how you did that for your micro teach, right? And you don't feel comfortable just spinning something out of it, then you can put in there, I would need to know all the learning needs of my class, and I would need to know what strategies for you to use for ELLs or things like that, right? Because the purpose of this part is just to get you familiar enough with the TPA questions. So when you're doing this in student teaching, you kind of know the plan with the EdTPA in mind, right? So that you don't end up planning and executing a lesson that doesn't give you enough material to talk about, right? And I'll know you've gone through and engaged with it when you put in there a sentence or two about what you need, right? These are basically like notes to yourself that you can look back on in the fall or next spring whenever you're student teaching. So this is what we have left to do. Feel free to just like put sentences in there about what you can and can't do, reminders for next time. It's totally fine. Like I said, I'm not, I put in here, like, I'm not judging the quality of your reflection on an experience that you didn't get to have. You don't have to make up a fiction about it. I don't want it to be any more stressful than it's just gonna naturally be. So yeah. Any questions? And then the Padlets are on Fridays, and one is about the 2 Stommel readings. I tried to put the 2 readings and a link to Padlet in the assignment sheet so you can access those there. These are fascinating, why I don't grade and how to ungrade, and he's fun to watch. He's fun to follow on Twitter too, and he's an interesting guy. I've chatted with him at conferences a couple of times. And I agree with a lot of what he says. I think in K-12 it's particularly difficult to figure out how to do it, but I do think there are ways to think about how it informs your grading practice. So I'll be curious to hear what you have to say, to see on Padlet, and to hear what you have to say on that. And again, you know, These are things that if you get crunched, time crunched, it's not a disaster if you miss them. So planning commentary tonight, instruction. I was just talking to Katie a little bit before everybody joined. The instruction commentary seems much more straightforward than the planning commentary. There's something like so agonizing and intricate about the planning commentary that the instruction commentary is more like, here's what I did and here's how it could be better next time. So I've got the task slides up for that. And I'm working on integrating some examples in here. But basically task 2 is you put your 2 video clips in, right? Identify what they are, what lessons they go to, and then you point at the things that you did in those clips that show you engaging the students, deepening student learning, and promoting a positive environment. Again, that means that for this 5-question task, the first question is, what lesson plans do these clips go to? So that's a pretty easy question to answer. It's 6 pages, it's limited to 6 pages, and 1 page is the template. So really you've got 5 pages that you can write in response to these questions. And you have 4 questions that are meaningful. The first one is like, what clip are you using? Or what lesson plan do these clips belong to? And you might write a paragraph or 2 to explain that. The example student did. I'm looking to get another NTPA example to see how other students have handled that as well. But then you can think about like answering each question with like a 300 word, you know, or a 250 word, right? You're going to write 1 page for each of these questions. And that seems like maybe a useful way to break it down. Positive learning environment, write a page about that. Engaging students in learning, write a page about that. You know, these seems to be things that you could probably expand on in a meaningful way. And then the last page is, what would you change, right? Which is always a useful thing. And this one asks you to explain with evidence from student learning, but also principles from theory and research. And this part often has a little works cited. You don't want to go overboard on the theory and research, like 3 citations or so, 3 or 4 is probably enough. But this is where Boehmer is useful, Smagorinsky is useful, or other kinds of things you've taken from your 351 course about like Bloom's questions or any of those kinds of things are useful to have so that you can talk about how you planned with theory and research and then what theory and research would inform your changes. So this is what's ahead for the week, the task 2 instruction commentary on your video. So that'll be fun. And again, just like the planning commentary, if you run into questions where you're like, I didn't really do this, it turns out. I didn't engage, but you all did, right? Because you all got us to, you solicited response from us as your students, and then you built on that response. So that's part of your engaging. Any questions about task 2? Any questions about task 1 that y'all are finishing up today? Or is it just set the timer and do it? And I'd seriously set a 20 or 30 minute timer and just say, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to answer the question, then I'm not going to go back to it and tinker it with it. I'm not going to go back and revise, right? This is not, the learning goal of this activity is not to produce the perfect answer, but to feel like you are deeply, deeply aware and knowledgeable about what the questions are going to ask you, right? So it's okay. It's okay if you've got sort of questions in the space where you should have answers, when you feel like you should have answers. Cool. But anything you can write, I'll give you feedback on, right? This is well framed, or you could bring in this research, you know. So any answers that you can produce will help me sort of talk about your framing of it. And that's a lot of what happens actually with this run through. It's not so much that I'm, what you learn about what you needed to have done, you usually do without my help, right? You answer the questions and you're like, oh no, I should have I should have collected more work in writing, or I should have, you know, used student names, or I should have spent more time letting them talk. Like, you learn those things in the course of answering the question, and you don't usually need me to point it out to you. The thing that I usually find myself doing in response to these tasks is saying, you want to rewrite this to sound more like you're the teacher in charge of the room and not a student struggling to demonstrate that you've done a task, right? So a lot of what I end up giving feedback on is, this is how you frame this so that it sounds like you're the person in charge of the room. You're the person in charge of the learning. And I'll do that for anything that you write. All right. 3 Ed TPA tasks. At whatever rate we can get them done. And I encourage you not to hang on to it. Like, turn it in today. If you have to turn it in with like a question undone, just turn it in. It's fine. Don't drag it. Don't let it drag behind you. It's not so important that it should be weighing you down at this point. Okay. So if you find, you know, that you got stuck in answering question 3 and you just could not get to 4 or whatever, just turn in whatever you've got at the end of the day, whatever point you determine is the end of your day. I mean, you've got till midnight to turn it in, but just turn in what you've got, and I'll give feedback on what you give me. That's it. Monday for the 3 tasks, Fridays for the 2 Padlets. The readings are also here, so when you, if you're looking for them, they're here. They're also linked, I think, in the days. I did a bunch of this like all at once, and it's hard when you're trying to make things redundant in an online system to make sure you don't misplace something. So if you see something that looks weird, it looks like you're asked to read one thing in one place and a different thing in another place, just email me and I will, if you can't figure out which one I really mean, and I'll tell you which one it is. But you do a lot of copy and pasting in building an online system, and there's always a danger then that things will be in the wrong place. All right. So what do we think of chapter 14 of Boehmer? Any thoughts? Did we get to chapter 14 of Boehmer? Not, I can give you the quick rundown. 14 is about new literacies. So it's really just him trying to talk about how you think about new literacy activities like gaming or texting or being in online forums, how you think about literacy as a participatory structure, right? Reading and writing are things we participate in with other people. They're social activities. And so he's trying to make those connections between standard traditional literacy practices, like what we do when we read and write with a pen and pencil and paper text, and what skills from that are useful to carry over into digital environments, and what's different about digital environments that offers both opportunities and challenges to teaching. So it's useful in that sense. I also think it's kind of useful as a model for citing research and theory. So especially if you end up doing something in your teaching that is multimodal or has a digital component or a video component, it might not be a bad idea to revisit this chapter when you're trying to cite research and theory that helps you explain why you're showing a video of Romeo and Juliet, right? Or why you're having them acted out, right? Because he talks about new literacies can be performative too. So all these participatory, performative, interactive kinds of things that you want to do with students that sometimes involve, that go beyond our traditional notion of writing an essay or writing a response. He kind of touches on here and tries to draw that connection between like why an ELA teacher would basically have students do what you would expect to see in a theater class, right? You always get that question, right? Why are we doing this? This is theater class. And it's just an attempt to get out of whatever you're asking them to do. They don't really care about the integrity of theater class and that theater only gets to do Shakespeare. So this helps explain how literacy is a framework under which we draw in lots of different kinds of reading, writing, listening, speaking, viewing, and representing tasks. So if you end up having something like that as part of your lesson, then that chapter 14 might be useful to you in citing research and theory for why it's an appropriate way to assess students, you know, or an appropriate activity for deepening their learning. And those questions about deepening learning, I think, are really, really where your one-pagers, like if you've seen teachers do one-pagers, like multimodal or viewing, you know, where people are drawing, Megan, kind of like your activity, that's really a way to start to cite research about how, you know, our brains make some kinds of connections in discussion, they make some kinds of connections in writing, they make other kinds of connections when they're embodied, when you're acting them out, or when you're representing them. And it really deepens their connection to the text. It's more than just imagining a person, a character, or a setting, and it's really having students, you know, make those kind of learning connections. Any questions about that generally, or commentary on that generally? All right, well, that's what I've got for the learning portion of our class. I will